Welcome back. In this part, I'm going to tell you about how to create a new conda environment. So your conda is installed. So let us now work with the conda in our little project. I just give you an overview. Okay, when we're working with conda, we usually work with it using the command line interface. I know that there are ways or graphic user interface or GUIs that allow to work in Windows with the conda environment, but I've never used them, and we use only in Linux, as I told you in the first video. So yeah, we use the command line. And what we're going to do today, first, we are going to create a conda environment from scratch. We usually create one for each project, and we will verify that conda environment. And the second way to create a conda environment is using a file, and we will verify it at the end. So why do we need? So if you remember, we had the analogy to a workbench in the lab, and because we have specialized tools for it, it's exactly the same thing here. The reasons why we should do this for each project is because versions of programs are changing really fast, and because you don't want to set up your computer every time new for the new programs that are necessary. So that's kind of like a pain. And because it allows you at the same time to tell others how you did your analysis, which versions of which programs you used, and that way they can reproduce your analysis and your results and maybe use it for their own project. So how do we create a conda environment from scratch? Usually what I do is I have there is the command conda create, and it will create a new environment. I give it a name. In this case, I'm calling it ML, and I tell him which version of Python I want to use. So basically, when you read this whole thing, you know this is the prompt, and the first is calling the program. In this case, is conda. And then I said conda create the environment with the name ML. I tell him this is the name because I have this little, what is called a flag. -n tells the computer that it has to organize this next text into the name of the environment. I tell him use the version 3.7 of Python. Once I have done this, I need to activate. We saw in the last video how to activate. Is basically you go to conda, activate ML, which is the name that we just gave, and automatically you will see that the base changed for ML. That means we are now in our new environment called ML, and then we verify that it installed the right version of Python. It will install a little bit more than just the Python version, but I just want to show you how to look at what happened in your environment. So you do conda list, and it will list all the programs that are being used in that environment, and you look at the tons of lists of files and programs, and you will see there are 4 columns, and one is the name of the program, the version, and we said 3.7, and it took the 3.7.6, which is fine. The build, it has a specific number for each of them, and the channel. So usually the channel will be the place where it downloaded it from. Sometimes it does come with the name, sometimes it does not. In this case, I just put an example of Conda Forge, which is one of the places where most of the downloads are taking place for. Good. So we have created our own environment from scratch. But what if we want to reproduce or use the same type of analysis that another person or in the lab or another lab used, and they used conda? So the first thing that you will download the data from their repository or from their analysis, and you will see a file called environment.yml. They call it sometimes YAML because sometimes it's written with the YAML, but it's basically a file that it will allow you to see or to reproduce your own environment based on what they use. You use that file to create the conda environment. This is how a very simple YAML file looks like. This is the one that I've been using for creation and the demo. We just have a name and the dependencies that are necessary. So I want to install the Python and the pip, which is a program that is used for Python. So how do we do it? We call the conda env, which is a sub program in conda, and we tell it create the environment and call with the name demo. Remember our little flag for the name, and we tell it use the file environment YAML to see what exactly I want to have in my environment. Easy peasy. So as soon as it installs, it will tell you, okay, downloading and extracting packages, verifying everything, executing everything, and once it's done, it will tell you to activate this environment, use conda activate demo, which we already did, and conda deactivate. And that's it. Our environment is ready to go, and it should have exactly the same version, program versions or software kind of that the other lab or other member of the lab use to have their results. So in general, now we know how to create a conda environment from scratch, and we know how to use a YAML file for it. The sources that I use that are really good, I have them in the links underneath in the comments, are from Data Carpentry, which introduces to conda environments for scientists. And the conda documentation is always really good, and it's really easy to follow in comparison with other documentation systems. Good. So if you have any ideas, questions, just write them in the comments, and I try to get to them as soon as I can. See you next time. Bye bye.